In this video today, we will be going over the method and the steps required to do a rebuild on one of these Graco displacement pumps. And with this video, I'm going to do my best to also throw in some of the conventional ways that we are currently utilizing to do a rebuild on one of these, and a lot of the headaches that do come with that, and how this platform does address a lot of those headaches. So with this video also, we'll be utilizing an 1800 Graco displacement pump that actually is currently not in service. It's been pulled off a truck that's not currently in use. So it has actually already been cleaned out, which will definitely reduce the amount of time required for this video to go through a cleaning and a rebuild process as well. So I'll also be linking another video here that actually shows the method and the cleaning process of one of these pumps while they're actually already on a truck before we even pull them off to do service on them. So with that, I will go ahead and get this camera set up on another angle here to get a better view of this rebuild process, and I appreciate it. All right, so before we actually get into the steps of doing a rebuild on one of these pumps, I do want to point out the initial benefit here that you will immediately see. The platform is on a hitch. It is on the back of a pickup, so it is mobile. It is something you can carry with your crew while you're out of town. You could be hours away from the shop, and if one of the pumps do go out while you're out on the job, it is something that can be handled while you're out there in the field. So instead of having to come up with the accommodations and the logistics of getting that truck back to the shop in order to do the rebuild on it, where typically you would have to utilize a table vise and a press in order to do this rebuild, this platform does address that, and you're able to handle the whole rebuild process while you're out in the field. It does come conveniently packed away in this carrying case. All the components and the hardware are included in that. It takes about 5 minutes to get it set up, about 5 minutes to break it down and get it back into the case. So it is a pretty quick setup, and you can also utilize the bed of the truck in order to keep all your tools organized. Everything that you would need in order to do the rebuild is there with you. Actually, we had 2 of these platforms set up in the shop during this winter maintenance. This particular platform has gone through 20 rebuilds, so it is quite messy. I apologize about that, but it is well enough in order to be able to show this demo. So that is right off the bat the initial benefit that you will notice. It is mobile. So with that, I'll go ahead and get this set up on another view. All right, guys, so here is step 1. Step 1 is getting this pump locked into position here onto the platform and secured. It'll actually stay in this position here throughout this whole process of breaking it down, cleaning it, and the rebuild of it would be in this position. We find it is the best position for it during this process because we have access to everything here. We have access to the check valve, we have access to the 6 bolts, the top packing nut, as well as the lower here, obviously being exposed. So it is definitely the best way to approach this pump during this process. Also, while it is upside down, it does allow any material to start to easily flow out that's normally collected throughout its use up here on the top packing cup that would be up here. So I would have a bin underneath to start collecting any of that material that does start coming through while I'm breaking this down. I'll also be utilizing carb cleaner here to get out any other residual material. So that would be the first step. All right, so before I get further into the next steps, I do want to take this moment and point out the conventional way that we are currently utilizing in order to deal with the rebuild on one of these pumps. Normally, I would have this pump on the ground on some cardboard in order to collect any residual material that would be coming out of it. These pumps are quite heavy. They are roughly about 80 pounds, so they are quite cumbersome. They do require to be rotated often in order to be able to get to all the components of it, to disassemble it. And when you do start to disassemble it, a lot of that residual material will eventually make its way out of the pump, and eventually make its way onto the outside of this pump, which just increases the amount of time and the amount of cleaning supplies that are going to be required in order to get the rest of the pump cleaned up. So that's a substantial benefit of utilizing the platform, having this pump locked into position, stable, having access all the way around to all the components in order to be able to disassemble it, clean it out, and do the reassembly of it as well. So with that, we can go ahead and get into the next steps. So what I would be dealing with right now is taking the top packing nut off, as well as also taking the check valve off. All right, so once I get the top packing nut off and the check valve off, I would inspect the check valve, make sure that that's not stuck open or stuck closed. I would get this cleaned out and also rebuilt if it is required to be rebuilt. Now during that time that I'll be dealing with this check valve and having the top packing nut taken off, I will have given that a little bit of extra time here for any other residual material that has been collected up on the top housing here to continue to drain out into the bin underneath. So once I have all those cleaned up and ready for reassembly, then we can get into the next step, which would be dealing with these 6 bolts that holds this whole pump together. All right, so now that I have the 6 bolts taken off, I'm pretty much ready here to begin the disassembly of this pump. Those 6 bolts is what holds this whole pump together. So now I do have access to be able to start dealing with the lower housing here of the pump. I will go ahead and get that removed. And at this point, I would begin the process of getting all the components taken out, cleaned out, and having those ready for reassembly as well. You'll notice here that this lower has a male cam. This part of it actually gets attached to the feed hose that comes from the material tank and feeds the pump. So this particular male cam would actually get locked into position here onto this side of the platform. If some pumps also do come with a flange, and if that is the case, then you would be utilizing also this side, but on the platform as well, and being able to get this lower housing locked into position in order to be able to start dealing with it as well. All right, so I got that locked into position here. I'm able to start taking all the components out of it and start getting these all cleaned out and having those ready for reassembly as well. And then also I would be utilizing carb cleaner here to get the rest of this lower housing cleaned out. There is an opening on the bottom of the plate as well that would collect any material that's still flowing through, and as well as any carb cleaner that I'm utilizing to get this all cleaned out. So once this lower is done as well, then we're getting into the next step, which is actually really the real value and where this platform actually really shines, is dealing with this piston. This piston is definitely one of the biggest headaches that we have to deal with when we're going through this rebuild process on one of these pumps. Now, Graco requires this piston to be torqued down with the lower packings of it, torqued down to 355 foot-pounds. That is a considerable amount of force, and the platform is definitely something that is able to take care of that step here for this rebuild. Now, as you can see here, the piston is well inside the chamber. And actually what we have to do here in this stop is get this piston extracted. And normally what we do, and it works quite well, if the previous rebuild has been done to spec, to Graco spec, dealing with this part of it is not as bad. Sometimes those packings are messed up to the point where it might be a little bit tougher to get this extracted by tapping it onto the ground onto a wooden block. So what we have here is a push plate that's attached to the top post of the platform, and you would get the cylinder rested underneath, and then utilize the car jack in order to be able to put even pressure in order to start extracting that piston. Now, as I had mentioned, if the previous rebuild of it has been done well enough, usually you don't run into those kind of problems, and typically tapping it on this end of the shaft usually does a pretty good job of extracting this piston. All right, so job done. I would get the rest of the cylinder cleaned out of any residual material, and here's where I will be dealing with the piston now. So as you can see here, these are the lower packings that get torqued down to 355 foot-pounds. And as you can see here, there's a lower packing nut, which in some way, shape, or form, you do have to deal with. Typically, table vise is required for this. And normally what we have found is that any which way that you're going to be working with this in order to get this top packing nut extracted, it does eventually put a beading onto these opposing flats here. So if there is a situation and you're dealing with a pump that is in that kind of a condition and it's pretty beat up, you will not be able to utilize the platform in order to get this part of the job done. And I would just recommend ordering a new lower lip, and utilizing the platform will definitely last you a lot longer. So now we're going to go through the process of getting this unpacked here. And the tower right off the bat accommodates a 2400 series pump. Because we are dealing with an 1800 right now, there is an adapter that we put in, and then we can go ahead and get this piston locked into position. And then we'll be utilizing its cylinder in order to take up the space in between the shaft and the tower. And then we'll also be utilizing a top centering ring. So now the beauty of this, what this does is it literally allows one individual to be able to go through this process. Now, normally the conventional way of dealing with a table vise, typically you would require another person in order to keep the top half of this shaft in place. The piston does pop off quite often, and it is actually extremely difficult in order to be able to unpack that nut and then also get it torqued down to 355 foot-pounds. So this is literally a one-man show. One person can do this. So because this is packed down to 355, I'm going to be using a cheater bar with a crow's foot open wrench here on the top in order to be able to get to it and get it undone. All right, so as you can see here, job was done with that effectively. And here you'll see the lower packings. At this point here, I will get the rest of this cleaned out, and then also utilizing the new rebuild kit to begin this process of reassembling it. Our Graco kits and basically all our equipment and supplies come from MRL, Mark Right Lines. So I would get the new packings on, and I would begin this process of reassembly. We'll just hand tighten them right now. I don't want to get those pushed out anymore. Make sure that my ball is, the bearing ball is still in there. I would get this locked back into position. And then I'll be also inserting its cylinder back into place in order to take up that space. I will make sure that the cylinder is resting over the packings. Again, use the top centering ring. Now this is locked into position, and I'm able to get this torque back down to 355, which is required by Graco standards. Now, the difference here of what we're doing compared to the conventional way, typically the conventional way you are utilizing a table vise, and as I had mentioned before, finding a way to get this clamped down onto the vise well enough and secure enough in order to be able to start torquing this down. And if you are lucky enough to be able to get this torque down to 355, then what you would be doing is utilizing a press in order to get this piston pressed back into the cylinder. Now, while that can be done utilizing a press, we have found that a lot of times, especially if there's a lot of newbies working on these, the packings do get nicked up quite often. If they do, it definitely decreases the service life of this pump. So what we're doing different here in this method, as you can see here, we have secured the piston in place. We have put the cylinder back into place as well. However, the difference is here we're utilizing that cylinder in order to sit in its place over the packings. So what we're doing different here is we're actually getting those packings flared out, creating that seal inside the cylinder, which is what it's supposed to do, while it's already inside the cylinder. We have found this way it evenly expands out those packings and evenly gets them distributed, creating that seal around the cylinder. So at this point, I would be using the cheater bar again with the open crow's foot wrench here. I will also be utilizing a digital meter here in order to be able to read out the foot-pounds that I am torquing this down to. Actually, all this equipment here has come from Harbor Freight, and I'm sure you can find it in many other places as well. But this is what I would be utilizing here in order to get this torque back down. Now, I'm not going to torque it here at the moment to 355. I do want to be able to utilize these packings again. All right, so I put a pretty good amount of force on it. I would say maybe close to about 80 foot-pounds to 100 maybe. But as you can imagine, 355 foot-pounds definitely takes a lot more pressure to get those flared out. But right now they are good enough in order to have created that seal inside and be able to continue to work with the with this demo. So what you will notice here, those packings have been flared out inside the cylinder, and what that leaves us with is that lower 1/4 inch lip here with the opposing flats that we're going to have to deal with now. So what we have found is that we can utilize the lower bearing ball, and that rests perfectly well inside the concave area here of that lower nut, and we can go ahead and tap this end onto a wooden block again in order to get this pushed back into the cylinder. Although I didn't do it now, I would normally have put a little bit of lithium grease on that in order to get that pushed back a lot more smoother, but it typically is not a big deal in order to get that pushed back in. So I have successfully got the piston back into its cylinder. Now I'm able to easily get that fitted back into position here with the lower housing. Now, if I did not push that lip back in, that would not be able to sit snugly in its place here onto this lower. Basically, just the geometry of it does not, really require, really allow you to be able to get that rested back into place. All right, so at this point here, I am ready for the reassembly of this pump. I will begin after I have dealt with the piston here. I will deal with the top packing nuts, and because this pump is upside down, actually the packings will have the lip facing us. Normally they're facing down, but in this case, because we are dealing with it upside down, they will be facing us. I will go ahead and get those back in. At this point, all I'm going to be doing is just securing them by hand, making sure that they're seated well into position. I don't want to get these flared out at all. Hoping that's a pretty good angle there. So as you can see here, I'm just snugly getting them into place. I don't want to put any more pressure, get those flared out anymore, because then the next step will be to get this piston rested back into place. All right, so I'm gonna safely get this piston back in, having that seated back into place here. And then I can go ahead and start the reassembly of the lower. All right, so now that I got the lower reassembled with all its components, I can go ahead and hold it here with my thumbs and flip that over and get that rested back into its position. I'm going to give it a few turns here, making sure that it's smooth, making sure that that O-ring is seated well, and get this lined up. And we're actually almost done, so I can go ahead and get the 6 bolts back into place. All right, so these bolts get torqued down to 190 foot-pounds. So what I would be doing initially here is getting a torque wrench here with the 15/16 socket, and I would get these torqued down to 160 initially, making sure I'm rotating, alternating my positions here, so I can evenly get both the O-rings compressed evenly. Once I've hit 160, then I would jump up to the 190 where they are required to get torqued down to. So once I get that finished, then I can go ahead and get the check valve back on. I didn't actually mention here earlier, but when I do get that check valve off and I'm dealing with this check valve, I would also begin the process of kind of cleaning out any other residual material that's left over in this piping right here, which also is allowed to flow through and down into the bin underneath, and getting this part also cleaned out as well. So there you have it. The pump has been rebuilt. I have shown you the steps in order to get this done successfully utilizing the platform. Just to kind of go over here the few other points here. So this top pack nut, I would also continue to use a spanner wrench to get this tightened down. Now Graco requires this top pack nut here to get torqued down to 250 foot-pounds, and as I had mentioned, the bolts get torqued down to 190, and then of course the lower pack nut that we had seen here gets down to torqued down to 355. Now if you are able to successfully get this torque down to spec, these pumps will definitely last and provide service much longer, definitely increasing the amount of time you're going to get out of them. So with that, that pretty much completes everything. I do want to mention that these platforms will be available here this season for 2024. Pretty much any of the components can also be ordered individually. You know, sometimes these components can get lost or damaged throughout time. Those are available individually as well. There you have it. Thank you. All right, so before I wrap everything else up over here, actually the weather has taken a bit of a turn. It has gotten quite windy out here. I do want to give a little bit more information about myself. So I've been in the road striping industry since where I've pretty much been around these pumps since then. And the majority of my work is on plural component fitted trucks where these pumps provide their service. And I do want to take a moment and give these pumps their due props, because they are absolute workhorses. They are beautifully designed. Once you really get a good understanding of exactly how they work, you come to find that they are absolute genius in design. It's actually a really good example of form following function here. So I do want to say that if you are able to get these pumps rebuilt to Graco's specs and then also operated correctly during their use, they theoretically could last a very long time. Now, we found that with the platform, you're able to come up with a pretty consistent and pretty effective routine, and keeping yourself definitely more organized during this rebuild process that increases the possibility to be able to get these rebuilt correctly. Now, if you are dealing with them the conventional way and you're manhandling these on the ground, and it does get quite messy, it does really throw you out of a routine if you are able to develop one. So we found that with the platform, you are able to be consistent. You are able to have all your tools right in front of you, keeping you in one place. Definitely increases that possibility of developing a pretty good and consistent routine, which is a big plus in getting these rebuilt correctly. So with that, I will be signing off, and hopefully here in the future I'll be making some more videos, possibly on how these pumps exactly work for individuals that are just getting introduced to them. So with that, I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to check this video out.